All right, y'all. I'm struggling, but we are on Jake Wagner's testimony day 3. This was last Wednesday, so a week ago yesterday. The prosecution continued on Wednesday morning, asking Jake about his marriage to Elizabeth, now Elizabeth Armour. Jake said that his family was resistant to the idea of Elizabeth living in the house after the accusations that were made from Sophia. Um, or I guess on Sophia's behalf. Jake said he doesn't explicitly remember his brother wanting her to move out, but he remembers George encouraging the idea. Ultimately, Jake and Elizabeth agreed that Elizabeth would move to Nashville to go to college down there, and that they would have a fake divorce. He said his trucking route took him through Nashville a lot, so he'd have the opportunity to visit her regularly. Jake claims that his actual plan was to divorce Elizabeth because of the potential possibilities associated with the accusation leveled against her. He said he later learned her plan was also to divorce him once she left, which is a classic, well, you only dumped me because I didn't dump you first. But whatever. After she moved out, he said he'd heard from her just a couple of times, 2 to 3 emails and 1 phone call. He did learn that the phone call she made was the one she made while it was being recorded and listened to by BCI agents. Jake and George were hired by R&L Trucking when they came back to Ohio for good as long haul truckers. They said that Jake said they were certain that him and George were certain that the truck was bugged, and they were right. Jake said while traveling, they spoke about a list on Jake's phone containing several guns categorized under the names of the members of the Wagner family, the quote unquote wish list. The brothers called the list a wish list, stating they were guns the family wanted to own but did not already. And obviously that wasn't true, and Jake admitted that it wasn't true, and that these were conversations that were planted for the investigators to hear. At one point, BCI agents texted George a photo of a hand holding a 1911 Colt pistol. The brothers were together in the semi-truck when he received it. Jake said he called R&L and said he had a family emergency and needed to cut the trip short and head home. He said he doesn't remember if George did the same. The image didn't make Jake nervous, but he said it angered him that investigators were either contacting he or George on their personal cell phones rather than going through their attorneys. He did admit that it was his hand holding the gun in the photo, though he knew the officers couldn't have recovered the real gun since it was in a bucket full of concrete at the bottom of the lake at the Flying W farm, and it was in 2 pieces. Canepa asked Jake if during those trips in the semi-truck, George ever made threats of violence against the BCI agents. Jake said, quote, "I heard what I'd call vented frustration." So sorry, the last one cut me off again. I didn't realize how far into the video I was. Anyway, they asked if George had ever threatened the BCI agents, and Jake said that he heard what he would call vented frustration. Jake said that the family rarely talked about the homicides, but at one point his father did make a comment to him. He said, quote, "I remember him saying something about the dog Brownie that was owned by Kenneth in the camper, but it didn't move." He said the comment came after they attended Gary's funeral, where someone in attendance remarked about Brownie and how Kenneth was shot if the dog was there. Family members testified early in the trial that Kenneth's dog Brownie was not nice if the dog didn't know you. At another point, Jake said he spoke with his father about his feelings following the murders and whether Jake regretted anything. Jake said, quote, "He was frustrated with me because of what he had, per se, been made to do because of me, and asked if I regretted doing the homicides." Jake, of course, told his father that he did not regret them. That is no secret. He still doesn't regret them. Angela Canepa asked if that was true. Jake said it wasn't true, that he does regret them. Don't fucking believe him a single bit, but he said he told that to Billy to make Billy feel better. Jake said he thought if he told Billy he thought they could have handled things differently or that the murders were all for nothing, it could have led him to suicide. In 2019, Jake learned that his grandmother Rita had decided to cooperate with the prosecution, and she took a plea deal in December of that year. Newcomb agreed to plead guilty to obstruction of official business, and the state agreed to drop the forgery and perjury charges. Jake said he learned the news from his attorney and that his grandmother had come forward because continuing to lie was not the Christian thing to do. Jake said, quote, "To me, it felt like the answer I was looking for at the time. I suppose you'd call it an answer from God." Lying to his attorneys about his part in the murders had apparently been weighing on him, and he felt that his grandmother's confession was a sign that he should make a confession of his own, so he told his lawyers the truth. So at the time, he still intended on taking it to trial and had no intention of cooperating with the prosecutors. Telling his attorneys about it was basically to get it off his chest and ease his conscience. I'm extremely tired. To ease his conscience, and it would also explain to his attorneys why he could never take the stand in his own defense because he would not lie in court. I mean, this man's morals are all over the fucking place, and it's so frustrating. On the 5th anniversary of the murders, Jake confessed, pleading guilty to every count leveled against him, including all 8 of the murder charges. He took a plea deal, trading his testimony for anybody who was facing a jury to have the death penalty specifications dropped against them all. For this to stick, Jake's testimony must be true and complete and accurate. Go to the next part. Jake, day 3. Is that what day we're on? Yes, day 3, part 3. They then asked Jake about where the truck went. He corroborated the story that it went to Uncle Bobby. He told Jake it was nice of Billy to gift his daughter a new truck. Jake said he immediately assumed the truck his cousin received was the one Billy drove off with after the murders. They shifted the questioning over to the goose house that George helped him build and the concrete buckets that weighed it down in the pond, holding the evidence. Here is some pictures of the evidence. That is a gun cut in half. Some pieces. There's a flashlight right there that was probably used to make the silencer. Several shell casings and some other things. Jake was then asked to identify items that were laid out and photographed by the investigators that were recovered from the buckets filled with concrete at the Flying W farm. These contained the magazine for an SK assault rifle, oil filter, SKS rifle, the action of one that was cut up into pieces, a cut up .40 caliber Glock pistol, 3 SKS magazine, 2 Glock magazines, SKS cartridges, part of the SKS rifle barrel, 2 handgun magazines. Jake couldn't say what kind. Also inside was a green-handled knife that Jake said he had tried to use to pry open the back door of Frankie and Hannah Hazel's home. The metal around the door was damaged in the process, and he said the knife tip had broken off in the door. Angela then had Jake read his plea deal for the jury, his confession and everything, and then she detailed it for them, and then she asked, at the time Jake wanted it recorded. Canepa asked why that was, what his reasoning for that was. George said, Jake, focus. Jake had said it was because he wanted to make sure they couldn't claim he'd said something he hadn't because he wanted his family to know why he decided to cooperate. She then asked him 4 questions. Did all 4 members of the Wagner family, Jake, Angela, George, and Billy, know that on April 22nd, 2016, the intent was to kill several members of the Rodents? Did all 4 help in the preparation? Did all of them, besides Angela, go to Union Hill that night? Did all 4 of them participate in covering up the crimes? Jake's answer to all 4 was yes. She then asked Jake why he pled guilty to all 8 of the murders, if by his own account he only murdered 5 of 8. And he said, quote, I just took it all, I reckon. At this time, the prosecution rested and we got into cross-examination. John Parker took an interesting approach right off the bat. He noted that Jake has said he has bad hearing, that he has bad eyes without the glasses that he was wearing. And then he pressed Jake for other medical issues, where Jake said he had diagnosed himself with ADD and he was taking medication for depression and anxiety. Jake, day 3, part 4. Basically, they went through a lot of the same type of questioning, step by step, the sequence of the events. Jake admitted he hadn't known his father had shot Chris Sr. that night too, and described trying to calm a hysterical Billy by telling him it was too late to back out after shooting Gary and Chris Sr. As Jake described calming his father, Parker asked if Jake was calm, cool, and collected at that time. By contrast, Jake said, I'm not going to describe myself as calm, cool, and collected. I would say I steeled myself through my shots. I don't know what that means. Parker then asked Jake, he didn't fire a shot, did he? Pointing at George, to which Jake said no. Parker then read Jake's statement saying that George had basically tried to talk him out of it, and he read that George didn't like the idea whatsoever. Parker pointed out that out of Jake's statement that George went along because he felt as if Billy might turn on Jake if the night went badly. Jake told the jury it was his understanding that George never intended to kill anyone that night. Jake then went over some more details from the murder scenes. He said at Frankie and Hannah Hazel's house, the coonhounds around back barked loudly when he approached the trailer. He also said that after Frankie was already dead, Billy had shot him too. Parker asked when he'd told the state that information, and Jake said it was around July of 2022. Jake also told them that dyeing his hair right before the murders had nothing to do with it. It was just simply his obsession with Norman Reedus. At one point, I guess before George, Jake, and Billy got to Chris Sr.'s house, I guess Billy pulled the truck off the road and walked around to the back of the truck where Jake and George were, and basically asked Jake if this was really what he wanted to do, and that if he wanted to call it off, now was the time. They went over several times of the details of the crime scenes, how many times people were shot, where he'd shot, etc. Jake said, quote, "I have no memory of the gruesome parts of the crime," adding that he wanted to keep it that way so he didn't focus on the wounds when shown in the photos. So that is a wrap on day 3. They did not have court the following day on a Thursday. They were off. And then they finished up cross-examination on Friday, and then they were done for the week, and then they began this week with Angela. So head over. We're going to do day 4, the final day. All right, y'all. Jake, final day, speed round. Let's get this shit done. Jake began to talk about when he was younger, that he was often taught by his dad how to pick locks, steal trucks, or items out of semis. Jake said not to boast, but he was very good at picking locks. Billy also impressed survival skills on them. Like how to evade detection, enter houses, shoot a gun, locate security surveillance, and survive on natural substances you'd find in the woods. Billy was also a doomsday prepper, and he had a shelter created out of burying a shipping container for Y2K in the year 2000. The container was stocked with food, water, and other survival items. Parker asked Jake to detail the types of things that Billy taught Jake how to steal as a child. Jake said it started with vending machines and moved to stealing trucks and trailers and siphoning fuel out of semis. At the age of 15 or 16, he would help scout while others stole shipments from the back of semi trucks at truck stops, specifically targeting anything hauling metals like copper. The copper trade is a big thing around here. You have to be careful if you have like copper in your air conditioners and stuff like that, because people will steal it and go scrap it for drug money. Billy would take any trucks or trailers that they stole along with the metals down to Mexico, where he had a buyer. At one point, he returned home from Mexico with a briefcase filled with $100,000 in cash, according to Jake. Jake also said that Billy taught his sons observance. He taught them how to sweep corners of rooms that could be hiding people or surveillance cameras. He said he was hardwired to act as if someone was listening to him at all times. Parker then asked Billy whether Billy believed someone could listen or see him through his TV. Jake smiled, responding that his father didn't trust any electronic device and refused to have a conversation around them. He also said that the family would bury cash surrounding their home on Bethel Hill. They talked about Jake's homeschool life, that he was taught by Angela for most of his life, that he only went to school for about a month, and that they used some kind of mailing company to do this. Jake said he refused to finish his studies in social studies, history, English, and psychology because he didn't believe he would need those, so his mom did the homework for him. Fucking need psychology, these fucking psychos. Parker then asked him about his hobbies, asked if Jake was influenced by the first-person shooter games that he liked to play, and Jake said he supposed that they may have influenced him. He also said that his father didn't believe in going to the doctor unless it was absolutely necessary. He'd been stitched up by Billy in the past, and often the Wagner patriarch would rip out a roll of duct tape or black electrical tape to bandage a bleeding wound. And honestly, that has my Pike County husband written all fucking over it. Head over to the next part. Hopefully we can finish it up. Jake's final day of testimony, part 2. At one point, we were talking about this backwoods type medicine that these people did. Jake described the time that he and George were moving semi-tires from a makeshift motor track the family had tried to run when he was hit in the head with a grappling hook. The brothers were on a four-wheeler, George at the wheel and Jake in the back, tossing the hook to grab and drag the large tires. At one point, Jake said he lassoed a tire and the chain pulled taut, He turned to look back and felt something smack him in the forehead. The impact peeled my skin to the skull, adding that it was a big gash. At the time, he was taken to the hospital for stitches. That was kind of an irrelevant story if they're talking about the fact that Billy didn't trust doctors, and then this one ends with him going to the doctor. John Parker then came right out and asked Jake if he was his mother's favorite son, to which Jake, as any true favorite, would reply, he has been accused of being his mother's favorite. At one point, Angela was running a kennel business, and it was profitable, but the demand was too high, so he said they were resorting to adopting mutts from the local pounds to keep up with the breeding. He was, of course, also asked about the arsons. He said he recalled 3 arsons specifically: a garage, 1 house. He said they burned because of a mold infestation, and the family home on Bethel Hill Road. The final arson was the house on Bethel Hill Road. It was the family home, and they committed it because his grandmother, Frederica, planned to sell the property but not reimburse Jake and his family for the home they built by hand that stood on the land. Angela was upset about that, so they burned it to the ground and collected the insurance money. Jake said that as a teenager, they had gone on a vacation to Alaska and had always wanted to go back. He said the initial plan was that they would stay up there for 5 years or so, and if it didn't work out, they'd move back down to the lower 48. They, of course, shortened the trip. Jake said that they had hurried back to Ohio to take care of the search warrant situation, and they were in Canada when they found out that their things were being searched. In the years after the murders, Jake and Angela both monitored chatter on Facebook and topics. Jake admitted he'd made a fake profile on Facebook, initially with the purpose of using it to speak to Hannah to determine whether she was interested in getting back together. But he still had it after the murder, so he used it to comment on posts on Facebook pages about the homicides. He told the jury he couldn't remember the fake name he used. I saw a couple people in a Facebook group that are pretty sure they remember who it was because he was in the groups. Okay, so I was just reading a paragraph ahead, and my jaw just fucking dropped. So Parker asked about Jake's relationship with Elizabeth. He said that he had wanted a Christian wife and someone to be a mother to Sophia, but Armour hadn't turned out to be the wife he hoped that she would be, and, quote, she lied to me on our wedding night. What? Next part. Jake's final day of testimony, day 4, part 3. So apparently after having this eventful wedding night that they had, the pair of them went to watch a video together on YouTube. He said that her search history populated showing searches for how to be a white witch and other topics related to witchcraft. To be honest, that is not where I thought this was headed when he said that she lied to me on her wedding night, but okay. Of course, to be fair, he also lied to her and said they wouldn't consummate the marriage, and he didn't exactly hold up his side of that bargain, now did he? Jake said he asked her about it, and she shrugged it off as just suggestions for searches, although Jake said he didn't believe that, and he said, no one wants to marry a witch. That's serious stuff. Jake ultimately let it go, but his wife also confessed to him that she was having doubts in her faith, and she later revealed to him that for a short time while living in Texas, she had been part of a cult. He said that once Beth had moved in with the Wagner family on their final return to Ohio, that she was no longer interested in doing the same things they had done together in Alaska. Parker asked Jake about forcing Elizabeth to consummate their marriage. Jake said he didn't. He also said Hannah had not been the perfect partner for him. And he said, I forgot to hit stop. He said, I love Hannah. It wasn't love at first sight. She grew on me. It's exactly what you want the love of your life to say. I mean, I didn't like her, but she grew on me. Jake, of course, blamed Hannah for being the instigator in the conception of Sophia, telling Jake that she was jealous of Tabby, her friends, and many others around her that were having babies, and that she wanted to have a family. Jake said that he felt that Hannah needed to finish school first, and they both should be older before having children. He said, after she left me, it's like she gave up her parenting standards and kept going down, down, down. He said that Hannah began smoking, hanging out with people he didn't like. There were rumors that she had cheated on him. He admitted her relationships with other men made him jealous. And he, of course, worried about the shit these dudes were doing to Sophia. Parker asked if Jake became consumed with the concern that Sophia was going to be sexually abused. And Jake said, quote, overcome with fear. Consumed is the right word. Parker then pointed out a couple of times that Jake was not truthful, that he had lied to investigators and stuff, and that sort of thing. Parker then asked him point blank, "You, sir, are a cold-blooded killer, are you not?" "Yes," Jake replied. "And a liar," said Parker. "I was," said Jake. We'll go over to the next part. We will hopefully finish this. Shut up. It's never ending. Jake's final day of testimony, part 4. Every part, my eyes are getting redder because I'm getting tireder. I don't think tireder is a word. I think it's more tired. John Parker then requested that Jake read the description for his GoFundMe page, which was pretty bad. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was pretty full of bullshit. And Jake said that he didn't write it, that Angela wrote it. Oh, but Jake had edited it. John Parker also asked if Jake had seen Frankie, Hannah Hazel, and others he'd already planned to murder at a local flea market called Trade Days. Trade Days actually happens in Lucasville, the town where I am now. It is a huge deal. I absolutely despise Trade Days weekend. But people go in there, they can barter on different items, buy stuff. There's always parvo puppies, stolen tools, check-ins, all the shit. He asked if there was a story that was attached to the Trade Days that circulated around Jake's family, and Jake smiled and said there was. He said, "I bragged about selling a lady a chicken that was pregnant." After Parker pointed out that that's ridiculous, that chickens aren't mammals, that they aren't pregnant, Jake sobered and admitted he wasn't sure if the story was true or not. He said, "I told that story often enough I can't remember if it actually happened." Bro, that homeschool education, fucking top notch. Top notch. Anyway, Parker began questioning Jake on his memory, saying like the things that he remembers and he don't. Jake said his memory was kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. He'll remember something is true that wasn't. Referencing the plea deal, he asked if Jake testified truthfully to the death, for the death penalty things. Parker asked if Jake thought life in prison was punishment. Jake said that he didn't think it was. They asked Jake for his plans for his future in prison. It was objected and overruled most of Parker's line of questioning because it was fucking dumb. Jake consistently told George he was going to hell for the lifestyle that he led. He conceded when asked by Parker. He was also present on more than one occasion to hear Angela ask George why he couldn't be more like his brother. Parker again pointed out that George wasn't supposed to be there. On redirect, Canepa pointed out that George was also taught these survival skills. His schoolwork was also completed by Angela and was present throughout many of the thefts and moments that Parker had previously mentioned. Canepa also asked about while Jake was Angela's favorite son, who was the favorite grandchild. And then Jake said, "I accused her of Bullvine being the favorite grandchild." Jake said he had been close with his mother, even closer with his brother, and close-ish with his dad, and that he described him and George as two peas in a pod. Parker ended by asking Jake, "You sold your testimony to this state to save your life, didn't you?" That's cold, brother. Jake's final day of testimony, final thoughts. John Parker ended the cross-examination by reminding Jake, "Are you a stone cold killer?" "I was," said Jake. "And a liar?" "I was," Jake responded. "You sold your testimony to the state to save your life, didn't you?" Parker adding that Jake had not heroically fallen on the state's sword to save his family from the death penalty. He had done it to save himself. That is a good argument. I like that. I'm going to use that. Probably never, but should this ever come up, I'm going to use that. Jake, of course, denied this, and he told Parker he offered his true testimony, though it did happen to save his life. Jake then stepped down off of the stand for the final time as a state witness in the trial of his brother, George. Rick Nash did bring up, should we remove the death penalty for George now? Canepa said she wanted to discuss that in private. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of week number 7, the end of Jake Wagner's testimony. We are only a week behind now. So the next witness for the state is Angela Wagner. And Angela testified this week Still was not recorded, was not audio recorded. We didn't see it. All there are summaries. So, how would you like to do Angela's? Would you like to do it the same way that we did Jake's? I mean, it was technically supposed to be day by day, but I did them all in the same day, but I still broke it down day by day. Or would you rather do a comprehensive, the whole thing? Because honestly, we're probably getting pretty repetitive on the things that they're saying. And especially if we're going to do Jake and Angela back to back, because they're wanting them to back up the story. So hers, I believe, is 3 days as well. I don't know. Today's Thursday. I think she was in there today too. So maybe 4. But let me know what you think, how you would like me to do it. If you want to keep it broken down day by day, even if I do upload them all at once, or if you would rather have just kind of a summary of the whole thing, let me know. And I will see you all later. Leave any thoughts, comments, suggestions, anything else that you have. Please be nice. I am extremely tired. I am in a mood today, apparently. And yeah. So I will see you all sometime very soon. I do have a full house of kids this weekend, so it probably won't be till Monday. So I'm just going to go ahead and prep you all for that it'll probably be Monday night before I start posting again, and we'll get caught up. See you all then. Love you. Bye.